Well, I already gave you the answer to what I think we ought to do, but let's go through your questions. First of all, you said I blame America, and that is false. I blame you, and I blame me, and I blame the rest of us who are allowing this to happen right in front of our eyes. That's not blaming America. Secondly, when you say that the United States had nothing, that it's the world economy that had to do with Afghanistan, that's just not true. Afghanistan has always been in a very poor place, and there are many reasons for its current straits, but two primary ones are called Russia and the United States. Russia and the United States in the 1980s practically destroyed the place, not to help the Afghans. As soon as the place was destroyed, they pulled out, and the forces that the United States had organized to harass the Russians then took over. They're now called the Northern Alliance, and that led in the early 90s to what Human Rights Watch calls the worst period in Afghan history, as these various criminal forces that the U.S. had organized with its allies just tore the place apart. They probably killed 50,000 people. I mean, they were carrying out mass rapes and slaughters and destroyed Kabul. In fact, they were so horrendous that when the Taliban came in the 1994, 1995, they were actually welcomed, because at least they were bringing some kind of order to the place and driving out these madmen who had been left behind from the U.S. war. Meanwhile, the U.S. didn't do anything for them. So when you say, first of all, it's not blame America, it's blaming people like you and me who can do something about it. There's no abstract entity, America, that acts. We had a lot to do with this, quite a lot to do with it. There are plenty of other forces, too. You say the Taliban could solve the problem by just handing him over to the Taliban could solve a lot of problems by disappearing. I'm sure, I've been strongly in favor of that for a long time. However, I have no way of making them disappear. See, like, suppose we were in Russia in the 1980s, somebody could have, and some dissident was criticizing the Russian invasion. Well, a commissar could have stood up and said, look, why are you criticizing the Russian invasion? Why aren't you criticizing what the Afghans are doing to each other? Yeah, that's a standard commissar line. We know what to think about it. You and I are responsible for what you and I can do and what we do. We have no moral responsibility for what other people do that we can't affect. We may hate it, but we can't do anything about it. Like, we could have a debate, a discussion right now about the crimes of Genghis Khan, and we might be correct about it. It would have no moral value whatsoever. It might have some historical value. Same with the crimes that are going on in Sri Lanka, Can't think of anything to do about them, fine, then have an academic seminar, but don't think it has any moral value. When you tell me what the Taliban can do, it's exactly the same. The moral value of that is zero. Yeah, they could do a lot of things. For example, one thing they could do is what you said, turn him over to a third party. Oh, the problem with that is the U.S. has refused to allow it. Now, are they serious in that offer that's been going on for a couple of weeks? Well, we don't know. Because every time the offer is made, George Bush stands up and says, we're not going to talk to you. We're not going to negotiate with you. We don't want them turned over. It has nothing to do with how rotten the Taliban are. Yeah, they're rotten. A lot of rotten things in the world. We should be, if we're serious, we should be concerned with what we do and what we can do. If there's an elementary moral truism, that's it. People don't understand that. They're just not in the moral universe. What about your analogy? So let's say there's a killer in a house, and incidentally, nobody knows where he is. First of all, they don't even know that he's the person. Notice they don't have any evidence against him. I mean, there's evidence that his networks are in the background. Yeah, that's almost certainly true, although no evidence is presented. Like I said, it's prima facie plausible. But they don't know that it's him. He may be telling the truth when he says he wasn't involved, and there's some reason to believe it. In fact, a good deal of the foreign press and commentators believe it, because it just doesn't seem credible that he could have carried it out or initiated it. So they don't know that he's the perpetrator, and they don't know where he is. They haven't a clue where he is. So let's pick your house analogy, if you like. You say that there are people there who are going to defend him. Are those the 7 to 8 million Afghans who we're trying to starve to death? Are they defending him? No, they're his victims. They're not defending him. The people we're killing are innocent Afghans, not people who are defending Osama bin Laden. They're the victims of the Taliban. They're the ones we're attacking. The analogy you made is an interesting case, and you could talk about it in some seminar. It's got nothing to do with this. What's going on here, when the New York Times tells us that food shipments have been cut back to the point where the number of people now at risk of starvation since September 11th has increased by 50% to 7.5 million. That's another 2.5 million people at risk of starvation since September 11th, as a result, as they point out correctly, of the threat of U.S. bombing and the terror it's caused and so on, and the withdrawal of aid and of international workers. Well, those people are not defending bin Laden. Those are perfectly innocent civilians who have nothing to do with it, except that they're victims of the Taliban, who we, meaning you and I, not some abstract entity, are consciously acting to murder. Okay? If we can't face that, we have no right talking about this problem.